Dear ladies and gentlemen, this is our group presentation on the Induplim rule. This group is composed of BLS class members, Anna Nyankumbo, Opazindi, Rejoice Banda, Gertrude Vindi, myself, Pardon Banda, Gareth Makalua, Masimba Victor, Enoch Maida, Dexter Nduna, Simbarashe Matsika, Vigai Maunganize, Brin Mugota, Alois Sagota, Roger Gaigo. Every member of this group contributed to these video presentations, but we only have part of our group to present on the video. Our task was to look at the evolution of the Induplim rule and to critically assess the status of this phenomenon in Zimbabwean commercial law, as well as its applicability in Zimbabwe today. The loaning and borrowing of money has been, something that has been part of not only Zimbabwean law, but part of business, communities, trade, social relations since time immemorial. Our assignment will therefore strive to examine the Induplim rule, what it is, its history, and how it has been applied over time. We'll also examine it, how it has become part of Zimbabwean law. This assignment will also consider, when speaking on the evolution of the rule, how the main faiths of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam have had an impact on the rule and regulated the loaning of money and interest charges thereof to their adherents. The Induplim rule has been a tool used to do away with the old age vice of usury and sanitize its financial practices while promoting morals and fairness in business. This assignment will also will therefore apply research, case law, scholarly writings, teachings in the unpacking of the status and evolution of the Induplim rule.
The Induplim rule is a common law principle or rule that specifies that interest on a debt will cease to run when the total amount of a real arrear interest is accrued to an amount equal to the outstanding principal debt. The term Induplim is derived from the Latin word duplo, meaning double. Induplim therefore has been understood and translated to mean double the amount. In trying to understand the meaning of Induplim rule, it is imperative to also understand its purpose. So what is important to note from the onset is that the Induplim rule was mainly developed with the aim of reducing the harsh effects of continued accumulation of interest on outstanding loans or debts on the debtor to the benefit of the creditor. It was also developed in response to considerations of public interest and seeks to protect borrowers from exploitation by lenders who permit interest to accumulate unchecked. That being said, it can be concluded that it has an effect of encouraging the lenders to exercise their rights to be repaid promptly and without delay. So in other words, it has a dual purpose where it protects both the lenders as well as the debtors. Simply put, the Induplim rule is aimed at alleviating the liability of debtors to creditors by prescribing that interest ceases to run once it equals the capital sum that has been borrowed. No matter the rate of interest applied on any loan, the borrower who defaults is protected by this common law principle that says upon default, the interest liable to be paid cannot or ought not be more than double the capital sum that was initially borrowed. To further illustrate or to further explain this rule, I'll give an example. Suppose X obtains a loan from his bank or her bank, or obtains loan from Y, a loan of US $1,000, which should be repaid over 6 months, and perhaps at an interest rate of about 15% per annum. If he or she fails to abide by his or her promises, the interest will continue to accumulate only up to US $1,000 and no more. So the lender will therefore be entitled to recover not more than US $2,000, which amount includes the principal sum advanced. However, it must be noted that where there are other costs such as administration fees, it may be penalty charges, or even insurance costs, service fees, or any other ancillary charges associated. This will not be included in the in duplum rule consideration, as they are not interest. So in other words, in the given scenario, the lender Y will be entitled to US 2,000 plus whatever charges or costs that are associated with the loan that they got.
I am going to present on the definition of in-duplum rule and the historical background. The in-duplum rule is a legal Roman law rule which was adopted by the Roman Dutch law. It was brought to Cape of Good Hope in South Africa, and it became operational by then. There are cases which are believed to be the first that way in which this in-duplum rule was applied. And one of the cases included the Union government versus Jordan's executor. And the jurists in this judgment stated that the in-duplum rule has its source as the Roman law, from which it then was adopted by the Roman Dutch law. One of the greatest definition was brought forward by Greenwagen, who said that the amount of interest does not have to double or go beyond the principal amount, which is also called the capital. In 1891, July the 10th, this board of rule was then brought to Zimbabwe. It also became operational in the jurisprudence. And one of the leading cases, the Locais cases in which it was applied was the case of Commercial Bank of Zimbabwe versus M Builders and Supplies Private Limited. The in-duplum rule was then crystallized in the statutes of law of Zimbabwe. The statutes such as the Money Lending and Rates of Interest Act. The provisions of this act did not apply to the banking institutions. However, the Reserve Bank of Zimbabwe adopted the Consumer Protection Framework and then compelled all banking institutions to adopt and uphold the in-duplum rule. Since its operation in Zimbabwe, the in-duplum rule has enabled the recovery of a vast, big amount of loans that had been credited to debtors. It has also managed to make it possible for the rights of debtors to be protected as well as those rights of the creditors. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Anna Nyagumbo. I'm going to present on the rationale and application of the in duplum rule. As has already been stated, in duplum rule is just a Latin phrase derived from the word duplo, which means in double. Kelly Law and Roth argue that the in duplum rule is based on the public policy ambition to protect creditors, to protect debtors from exploitation by creditors. Indeed, the LTA construction versus administrature transfer held that it is anything but an anachronism and is part of our daily economic life, where it fulfills a useful function of aiding debtors in financial difficulties. That the in duplum does not apply to part payments. Also, it cements this role as a device to help distressed debtors failing to pay interest rather than calculative debtors shaking obligations despite their financial capacity to service their debts. Then serves the very important function of encouraging prompt enforcement of rights. South African scholar Vesio says it forces the creditor to follow up on defaulting debtors, as there is no inherent incentive in late enforcement. Without the in duplum limitation, abandoning debts and allowing interest to accrue would have been a profitable business with concomitant effect of financial ruin in incapacitated debtors. The in duplum rule thus forces prompt enforcement of rights in much the same way as prescription does. The law is certainly averse to sluggishness in asserting rights. The in duplum rule is also useful in disincentivizing lending money to bad risks. In the South African case of Paulsen and another versus Slipknot Investments Private Limited, the court held that the rule enforces sound fiscal discipline upon creditors. The in duplum provides a much needed cap to the
the evolution and conceptualization of lending and the in duplum rule. Over the years, there is three beliefs that have frowned upon the issue of usury and interest on borrowings, and these would be the Jewish people, the Christians, and the Islams. And I'm going to touch on a few issues that deal with the lending, especially in the Jewish sector. You want to know that the Jews actually thought and made sure that the lending would only have interest to foreigners as opposed to having interest on locals. And there are a few scriptures that touch on that. That is Psalms 15 verse 5 and Proverbs 28 verse 8, and also Nehemiah 5 verse 7, and lastly Ezekiel 18 verse 9 and 8. You want to also know that the Christian belief, in all its belief that there are people that are supposed to look at one another and to be brothers keepers without any usury, and lending synonymous. In Arabic, riba is any additor, however slightly above the principal sum lent, and therefore includes the usury and interest. Pakistan became the first Muslim country to officially declare modern bank interest as unlawful. The Federal Sharia Court of Pakistan declared laws permitting interest repugnant to Islam in 1991. The federal government of Pakistan and certain banks and financial institutions filed 67 appeals of judgment. You would also want to know that there are certain verses, especially in the Jewish community, that speak to and about these issues. Psalms 15 verse 5, that is Proverbs 28 verse 8, and Ezekiel 18 verses 1 up to 8. So the issue of the Noom de Plume rule has actually attracted a lot of interest in the three faith, that is the Christian faith, the Islam, and the Jewish community. The Christians would do to have the notion, my brother's keeper. It had a belief that the Christians would not charge each other interest and would take care of each other's needs, especially for those that were lowly ranked. Many think that Christians also owe one another no less fraternal duty than the Jews owe amongst themselves, ought to take no usury. That is in the Christian faith. One would want to also equate this to Islam, and Islam has a riba which is unambiguously forbidden in Islam, and usually are similar but not synonymous. In Arabic, riba is any additor, however slightly above the principal sum lent, and therefore includes the usury and interest. Pakistan became the first Muslim country to officially declare modern bank interest as unlawful. The Federal Sharia Court of Pakistan declared laws permitting interest repugnant. About the evolution and conceptualization of lending and the Noom de Plume rule. Over the years, there is three beliefs that have frowned upon the issue of usury and interest on borrowings, and these would be the Jewish people, the Christians, and the Islams. And I'm going to touch on a few issues that deal with the lending, especially in the Jewish sector. You want to know that the Jews actually thought and made sure that the lending would only have interest to foreigners as opposed to having interest on locals. And there are a few scriptures that touch on that. That is Psalms 15 verse 5, and Proverbs 28 verse 8, and also Nehemiah 5 verse 7, and lastly Ezekiel 18 verse 9 and 8. You want to also know that the Christian belief, in all its belief that there are people that are supposed to look at one another and to be brothers keepers without any usury and lending.
Hello Zimbabwe. Taking over from my fellow colleagues who have just given us a thorough explanation on the Noom de Plume rule, I would like to move over by going on and explaining on the status of the Noom de Plume rule within the Zimbabwean context. So what I would like to make clear from the onset is I would like everyone to have a thorough appreciation of the fact that in the last, from the last 4.5 decades, the Noom de Plume in Zimbabwe was premised on the common law. Up until 2015, we show the introduction of the Money Lending and Interest and Rights of Interest Act, Chapter 14, which clearly stated okay, hello Zimbabwe. I go by the name Pardon Panda, and taking over from my fellow colleagues who have just given you a thorough description of the Indjupulum rule, I would like to take over and give you an elaborate status of the Indjupulum rule within the Zimbabwean context. So what I need us to appreciate is that from post-independence, that is 1990, up until the period of 2015, the Indjupulum rule was premised on common law, up until the introduction of the Money Lending and Rights of Interest Act that was introduced in 2014, and that is Chapter 14, which clearly gave a definition of the Indjupulum rule. So what I need us to appreciate again is that the period from 2010 to 2015 saw what you called a dollarized economy, which means in terms of the application of the Indjupulum rule, it was rather an easy thing, which was being well appreciated and applied by the Zimbabwean government. But post-2015, we saw a rather difficult situation in terms of the application of the Indjupulum rule. Why? Because we saw the post-dollarization economy, and in terms of the application of the Indjupulum rule, we saw a rather haphazard application of the rule, whereby banking institutions and courts were rather fighting in terms of because the economy was experiencing rather in inflationary conditions, which means the application of the rule became rather difficult. So what I would also need us to appreciate is that from the period of 2019 up until now, we saw the introduction of the local currency, that is the Zimbabwean RTGS, which has been continuously experiencing inflationary conditions, and this has seen a very, very difficult situation in terms of application of the rule. So by the introduction of these two acts, that is the General Laws Amendment Act, Chapter 8.07, and the Income Tax Act, Chapter 23.06, submitted by the case Bindura Nickel versus Zimbabwe Revenue Authority, the court clearly stated that the Indjupulum rule is not applied to tax debts, which means we have got an exception here, whereby the Indjupulum rule is applying to all commercial transactions other than tax debts which are owed to the government. So, in summary, what I would like us to appreciate here is that the Indjupulum rule is a concept which has been appreciated in Zimbabwe, but due to the already situation which I have mentioned, from the period from 2010 up until now, we have seen an economy which has not been stable, and this has seen the application of the Indjupulum rule rather very, very, very difficult, and it has also caused some fluctuations, and which means that in terms of the court trying to apply the rule and the banking institution rather giving a fight, which means the economy was rather failing to appreciate the rule. So to aggravate an already desperate situation, the country is still trapped in liquidity and cash prices. I think that's all. Go.
Hi guys, how are you? My name is Brian Mkota, and I'm here to present on our issue to do with the Indjupulum rule. I'm basically doing the conclusion and the summary of what my colleagues have actually presented. So what we've seen is that the Indjupulum rule, we've traced its origins, where it came from, basically from the times of Justinian. It was there in the 12 tables. It came through and was incorporated in the Roman Dutch law, as has been alluded to before. And also, we find that the history has been traced from the religious side, the three faiths, which is Judaism, Christianity, and Islam. We've seen that basically the issue of debts or borrowing money has always been controversial, especially with regards to usury and just interest that are charged by the creditors. So to regulate that, it was from a moralistic point of view that the Indjupulum came into being. And over the ages, it has actually been regulated, and it has caused great consternation rather. So we find that the history has been traced and has been eloquently put by my colleagues up to this day, in the Zimbabwean context that is. A lot of locus classicus cases have been alluded to, including local cases and South African cases. And basically the reason we normally look at the South African cases is because our law states that we apply the law that was applicable at the Cape of Good Hope at the effective date. That's why you find a lot of our presentation also spoke of South African laws. But I'm sure my colleagues have ably been able to take us through the status and the evolution of the in-duplum rule till we got to the point that we've got. And I think we think as a group rather, it's actually a rule that basically has some drawbacks, but it also has some positives. So it's a case of balancing the needs of both sides of the divide, the debtor and the creditor. So the issue really is that we think it's a very fair rule, and we support the current status quo in Zimbabwe. Thank you very much.